That's a really great score, Eskil. I think that's a terrific effort. And probably the best way that I can help you is to talk with you about balance. There are going to be a few things here and there that, just little minor details. There was a wrong note. As most people could hear, there was a C sharp in the flute just now towards the end of that mock-up. But yeah, let's just talk about some basic things, and I will address other little issues as we go along, okay? But just from the very beginning, I just want to say this is really a great effort, and there are some really, really cool things. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay. So the first thing to address is this horn. Now you can actually hear in the mock-up that this C sharp really sticks out, this written C sharp, sounding F sharp, right? So it just really has this big weight on the dominant of this opening B chord, right? Just really just sort of sits on that fifth. Okay, so what that's telling you is that you need to balance this a little bit better, right? So like right in here, I would mark this as like pianissimo, okay? So, and the other thing too is just before we get too much started in this, tell me how many of what you want, right? So flute, oboe, clarinet, bass clarinet, and so on. This needs to be, you need to say how many flutes, right? Right, so 2 flutes, right? And so on. And like same thing here. Right, 2 horns in F. Right, so I think this was orchestrated from the template. So I'm not going to come down on people very hard about not filling it in, but I think I just wanted to leave it sort of. I felt that if I put in how many of each that you should use, that would be me dictating to you, okay, about how you should score. All right. So anyhow, so if this were scored at pianissimo, then you would get a beautiful balance here with the cello, right? But right now it's nobody's really going to hear that cello all that well, right? So this should be pianissimo going across to all players. Okay, now there's another thing too, and that is I'm selecting this, and you'll notice that it's dark blue, right? Okay, so over here on the corner of the screen, which is sort of out of sight, I've let me pull this keypad over here. Now the way to have your dynamics be consistent all the way through, select all. And that means that when the other voices come in, they will all be the same dynamic, right? So right now, the way that you've got it, this third voice here, second voice, and so on, they're all going to be kind of playing mezzo piano until they get some kind of, like right here, like you only have the dynamics are just marked for mezzo piano for the second voice, right? So if you select all with your keypad, then this will affect all the voices Okay? All right, so let me get rid of that keypad. All right, so, but obviously this should be softer. Now here you've got 3 on a part. You seem to have 3 horns in F, and maybe, I can't recall, there might be 4-part harmony later on, but if there are more than 2 horns, you really should have more than 2 staves. All right, so even if it's just a single third horn player, that third horn player should have their own staff. Okay, and now let's get back to the scoring. Okay, so we have this very, very delicate harp right in here. Now the harp, like I'm trying to avoid, just, you know, with the same breath as me trying to tell you not to, or telling you to balance certain elements, I'm also going to tell you to not dynamically mix, right? So in other words, don't have parts in the score that are generally the same strength at a bunch of different dynamic levels, right? So that is something to avoid. However, there are certain relationships between instruments that should be maintained for a good balance, right? So it's a different thing from dynamic mixing. It is more a question just of practical balance, right? So in terms of practical balance, when you have an integrated part like this with horns or brass playing along with strings, and you want the parts to balance, then you need to mark the brass down by 1 degree. Okay, so piano and the strings should be matched by pianissimo in the horns. Now this isn't always the case. There are some really delicate kinds of scoring, like for instance in the third movement of Schoenberg's 5 Pieces for Orchestra. That's an example of consistent dynamics all the way through, everybody playing pianissimo, not much of a balance, and so on. But, you know, the players will balance as they hear each other at really soft dynamics. But generally speaking, you know, the brass should be down, but the harp should be up, right? So if you want the harp to sort of stand out, you probably noticed in the mock-up you couldn't really hear the harp very well. So bring the harp up 1 or 2 degrees, right, in dynamically. So if you wanted the harp to stand out here, and by the way, the dynamic should go in between the staves, right? And you should also mark this. Hang on, let's try that again. You should also mark all harp dynamics with the, you know, with all voices, so that they will apply to both staves, right? So the general default for dynamics, if Sibelius does not understand something to be a particular dynamic, a marked dynamic, will be mezzo forte. So the default will be mezzo forte. So if you haven't done your dynamics right, if you haven't selected all for some of your dynamics on your mock-up, you'll hear like one of the lines just really stand out, and that is a sign to you that it is louder than it should be. But in this case, I would say actually mezzo piano, you'll get a much better balance there. Okay, but, you know, as far as the rest of this goes, I think it's fine, except that I think that you could have had more slurring, right? You know, slur, 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 right? You know, ba da 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 da, right? You know what I mean? And I really like the way that this is intertwined in here. You've got some counterpoint going on here, and that's fantastic. And this is really inventive, right in here. Just so long as it doesn't distract too much from the upward flow of the energy. You know, just like everything's reaching upwards, right? Like Lili is reaching her hands up to part the curtains, like she can see that it's bright outside, and she feels good, right? Lili's waking up, she's in her bedroom, she feels good, she reaches toward, her arms are lifted up to part the curtains, right? So it's lovely to have the counterpoint in here, and I'm sure that she would approve on some level, but just make sure that it doesn't distract too much when you add this kind of element, okay? But just, you know, aside from that, I would just say you need to, you know, here you were trying to inject some kind of slurring or some other kind of thing. So yeah, so there needs to be more legato bowing. So you know, maybe study study some of the other evaluations and see my comments on them. Study my score that from the Orchestrating Lili Boulanger video that's at the beginning of the big playlist. All right, so yeah, no problems with this. It's just really lovely. Okay, then now, da 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 dum da 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 dum. Okay, so da 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 da. So you're giving that middle voice to the violas. So here you really have doubled up on the harmony. That top note is actually a harmony note rather than a melodic note, right? So right here you got it fine in the oboe, da 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 da. Okay. But putting a lot of weight on that upper harmony note, you kind of lose the sense of the line going through, right? All right, but other than that, just looking at the general construction of this, it sort of works that you've got low flutes right in here, okay? They're not competing too badly with other players, except for the fact that you have horns right here, right? So these horns are basically going to kill this lower flute part. So if the horns are marked down to pianissimo, okay, and the flutes are marked up a bit, then they have a chance, but it's still more of a clarinet part, right? If you want this kind of beautiful floating sound right there, and you want it secure, and you don't want the other instruments to just stomp on it, this is really a clarinet part. Okay, just these 3 bars right here. This is fine. Okay, and here I wouldn't worry about like giving the second player a chance. Like, say, oh well, let's give the second player something to do. It's really better to have one player think out the entire line, right? So you've got your oboe player, bum 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 ba da 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 dum, right? And then you can even just cut that high F sharp and just give it to the flutes, right? Yeah, but like right now, there just really isn't that much emphasis on that middle line. But I'll shut up about it. So the big problem here is that you are pushing so hard with this trumpet, and you can just hear it in the mock-up too. The mock-up isn't lying to you here. It's just going, bum 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 bum, right? What if this were bum 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 bum? What if you just change this to the same function as the oboe, so we get that beautiful sound of the actual melody? Okay, and then you marked it down a bit, pianissimo to mezzo forte, while everybody else is going for a nice forte, right? And then you get a nice balance. Right, so just think about in this delicate scoring, just balance. Bring down the volume of your brass. Okay, and you just try to have 1 degree lower at least. Okay, if you are trying to integrate the scoring. Now, if the brass are just playing this big fanfare or something, and they are the featured players, that is a different thing entirely. Go ahead, mark them nice and loud. But if you want the lines to sort of insinuate and blend and merge and so on in color, you've got to bring down the volume of that brass. Okay, now we get to bump 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 bum dun 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 dun, and this is really cool because you've got oboes plus trumpet, right? And here, once again, I'm going to mention, as I have on many scores, like I think only 1 score so far that I've evaluated, maybe 2, has got this quite right. And that is that when Lili combined oboes and trumpets, she almost always, or I don't know, probably if I looked around I could find a place where she didn't, but almost always the trumpets are muted, right? And the purpose of that is to get a beautifully blended sound with the oboes and the trumpets. And then here you're adding viola to it too. So viola is like one of the softer, like violas and trumpets both playing mezzo forte, you'll hear about 80% trumpet and about 20% viola. Okay? So we need to even that up, right? Here you've got forte, like forte is left over, unless there's, like, it's kind of interesting, like your dynamics are kind of inconsistent, right? So we're missing I think we're missing a diminuendo here and a diminuendo there. But if your oboes were forte and your violas were forte, then it's fine to have mezzo forte here on your trumpets. But I would say even more so, what if they were muted, right? Even this part right here muted, right? And just adding some support to the oboe line rather than just wailing all over it, okay? So bump, 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 bum. And this is nice. The resolution here, you know, in horn and everything else. But once again, I would say pianissimo, crescendo to piano and back, right? So that you don't kill the cellos. And then you have your answer, horns and cellos, right? So why not pianissimo on your horns, right? And then you got a beautiful blend right there. Bump, 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 bum. If these horns are at piano, this E in your flutes will disappear. Right? It just won't exist. Right? And forget about the celesta. The celesta is so delicate, right? And especially down in its kind of clunky, this first octave of the celesta from C in the bass staff up to middle C has kind of a thunky sound. It doesn't have that kind of ding kind of sound of like a harder mallet on a medium hard rubber mallet on a vibraphone. That has a beautiful chiming sound. But for celesta, it just has kind of a thunk sound. Okay, so that will, any value of that, sounding an octave higher, of course, will be lost with the horns at piano, right? So I would say pianissimo, once again, balancing to the cellos at piano and flutes. One flute, I'm hoping, one flute at, now see here being really careful, like first oboe, second oboe. Right here, you really need to tell us how many are here. If you do A2 here, then I think you'll be able to pull this off. Okay? All right. So that's my lecture on that. Just really bring down the horns, A2, flutes, and piano instead of pianissimo. And then this will work. Now here, I just have a problem with this big leap here, right? Bum, 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 bum. Because this pickup here is stomping on the end of the resolution, right? Dun, 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 da, da. Right, there's the resolution, which we've got right here, right? But if the resolution note hits on the same note as the pickup, then the pickup basically just kills the feeling of resolution there, all right? So I would say I feel that is, you kind of want this burst, da 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 da, and it just is interfering with the flow of the concluding phrase. All right. So here you've got winds and strings, and this is all pretty nice. Da 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 bum bum. Yeah, it's a very cool, and that will balance pretty much the way that you've scored it. However, I would just kind of like think about how you could score this. Like right now, the way you've got it is you've got so much weight on this high F sharp, and like who is doubling that F sharp in the winds is the clarinets or the first clarinet and the first oboe, right? And here you've got the flutes in the middle, right where they're at the weakest, right? So like they will really disappear the lower they get. As they start to get down past this C, then they will just disappear into they'll just have hardly any power right where you need them the most, right? So you need to rethink that, okay? Nothing would be hurt if you just went. If you just switch the first oboe for A2 clarinets, right, in your voicing, and just went bum 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 bum, and then dropped out on the flutes, or had everybody play really really softly so that it wouldn't disappear. Okay, now here we've got F sharp divisi with your first violins, F sharp divisi with your second violins. And then octave below, we've got the second violins playing that, and then also the violas, right? So you've got a lot of doubling across here and a lot of divisi. I think you should try to figure out a way to get rid of that third voice, okay? So you've already got the bum, 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 bum. You've got the low voice here, so you don't even need it in the violas, right? So there are just a bunch of different ways of doing this. Like one way to do this is to have interlocking sixths, right? And not divisi, non-divisi. Perfectly easy to play these as sixths, double stops. So, sixth, 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 right? And the same thing in here, but F sharp up to D, right? That same D as this. And just get rid of the top line there, right? And so you just have the interlocking sixths, and then that gives you more voices to play with. Then the violas could be playing just this line here, really, the bottom line, and then just leave the rest of the cellos, and you're fine. All right, so that's one way of thinking your way through this. But the way it is now, you really have everybody stretched across everybody else, and it's going to be less cohesive. It's going to be less coherent, and clean of a sound in the strings, just because like they're so split up and they are kind of all over the place, and they're not really bonding together as individual groups within the string section, right? So I mean, it's having said that, I'm being a little overprotective and maybe even a little bit precious about that, but still, I'm just saying, like, what is the best option there? This is probably not the best way to go, but it is possible. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just, there are stronger ways to voice these chords right here in the strings. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Da 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 dum bum, and you get this this F sharp seventh right in here. Okay. Okay, so it's a little confused. So da 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 da, and then the resolution, and then you have yet another note. Now, once again, I feel that this weakens the resolution, right? Why not just have all the strings resolving with the clarinet and bass clarinet, right? And then just go straight into here, boom, da da da. Because when you put a pickup here, bum, boom, da da da, you really already have your preparatory note here on the downbeat. So you don't need a further pickup, right? That just distracts from the harmonic information, right? Maybe this was a mistake, and maybe you had intended for both of these two bars and these two bars to be the same rhythm, okay? But anyways, it's just a little weird the way that it's scored. All right, so continuing on, bum da 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 ba da 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 dun dun dun, and so on. All right, so this is real Ravel stuff, right in here. The way that this is all sort of written out in chords for your violas and cellos, and that's actually kind of a cool idea. And then here, like with the oboe on top, what you have to understand here is that the oboe is going to be really like the way that you got it. Like A2 oboes and viola right on top of there, doing, kind of joined together. The viola is probably not the best mix for this if it's going to be played divisi, right? So a stronger partner to make this cleaner and clearer would probably be like a second violin or first violin, right? Because that'll have that kind of warmer sound. But I mean, it's not bad. It's not the most ideal. Like if it were a single clarinet, I feel that would be like more, that would join together better. Okay, so da 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 da. So did you notice how in the mock-up this really stands out right in here? This da da, this kind of downward gesture right in here, and the problem with this is that it just really, like, it's because you haven't changed the dynamic here to piano, right? So like mezzo forte, piano, right? And then same thing here, right? Or maybe mezzo piano as you're getting louder. So yeah, so just watch your dynamics across, try to edit. I mean, you probably did a huge amount of editing, and now I'm pointing all of this stuff out, and you're probably saying, oh, darn it, he's pointing something else out that I forgot to do. But don't take it too personal. What I want you to think about, though, is think about your your mock-up engine as an editing tool, not just for things like tempo, is the tempo right through the piece, or have I gotten all the accidentals right, are all the chord changes right? There are a few places in the harmony here, which, I'm just here to evaluate your scoring. I am not here to evaluate your harmony, okay? So if you got the transcription wrong, or if you wanted to try a different chord or whatever, that's fine with me, unless the change is what's messing up the scoring. Okay, however, I want you to think about this third aspect of using your sound sets, using your mock-ups, and that is to listen to the balance, right? I mean, you must have heard, as you were playing your mock-up, if you played your mock-up, this big, note here, this big note just pushing its way out of the texture, right? So that right away might have given you a clue that you might have wanted to go down to pianissimo here. And you might have been thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to mess around with it too much. But you would have, if your instinct was to go to pianissimo here, that would have been right. So I want you to think about all those things. Or this little line sticking out here, this, really kind of mezzo forte on this B really takes away from the impact, the energy of these phrases getting bigger, right? So I think it's just a proofreading error, And same thing here. This should be a diminuendo, right? Da 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 dum. Right. So that the by here this should be marked piano with a diminuendo, and that way that this line can start fresh without being stomped on by these loud things that come before it, right? So just use your mock-up, the ability to do mock-ups as a kind of proofreading device. Okay, it's not to say that sound sets like Note Performer, like we're using here, or other options are always right. In fact, they're often wrong. But at least, like, they'll tell you if you've gotten certain basic dynamic things wrong, right? So right in here, this kind of echo here, B to G sharp, piano in the flutes. B to G sharp should be piano in the violins as well, right? So yeah, so just watch out for some of those dynamic things. All right, so here we've got this da 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 dum. We've got clarinets and bass clarinet playing in octaves with the cellos and the violas, and that is such a great sound. Really tasteful. I really like it. And then bum bum is. Yeah, so we're immediately going for the octave note here in the flutes, right? Let's go to the next screen to see how this works out. Okay, so it's from the previous screen, we had this big chord here, strings plus winds, and the horn starting to come in here and just pushing. So you're pushing in under the forte strings and winds, and that's cool, but maybe pushing up with your brass towards mezzo forte rather than towards forte, right? Although this is a lovely chorale right in here, so fine, go for the chorale. But if your strings are suddenly soft, right, it's just kind of confusing information in here, right? These oboes here are going to be quite overwhelmed by what's going on here in the brass, and these strings are almost like completely unneeded whatsoever. And the harp, forget it. Nobody's going to hear that harp because it's, you've got forte brass, right? Forte brass, they are there to kill the harps, right? They don't care, right? So why not just score this so that the entire group of brass is really just taking over right here, and everybody else is just getting the heck out of the way, right? One thing I will add to this, though, is like you are really going high up here to this B flat, like so I mean that is totally a possible note. You're going B flat F, and that's fine. Just be aware of just throwing high notes up there. Like you've got A flat up here at mezzo forte, right? So just watch out. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad, but it is going to. That note is especially. Like, think about the consequences of that note, right? The consequences of this note is that basically any kind of bowed notes in the strings at piano dynamic are just not going to, they're just going to be gone. That's it, they're gone, right? And that same thing goes for the oboe. Like, all of this scoring right in here. Trombones at forte, horns, trumpet, the oboes are just gone. Okay, especially with this high note, this forte on a high B flat. So the pizzicato might come through though. Like what if you had sort of kind of a pizzicato hit on this chord right here, right? And then you could add maybe a little bit of bassoon in there to kind of support the trombones as the music went downwards. It sort of really drops off here and doesn't really connect very well to the next part, right? It's just like there isn't any flow. It's just forte and then all of a sudden you're soft, right? So if there had been like maybe diminuendo towards the end here, then it makes more sense going into pianissimo right there. Now that with this dynamic, that celesta is actually audible, right? And then very soft flute and violins and so on. I would actually mark the flute forte here and the celesta forte as well, right? And then pianissimo in the strings. But yeah, once again, be consistent, right? Like this will stand out, right? So suddenly piano, right? Well, with no crescendo in your other line, these elements will suddenly be louder than everybody else. Okay. Yeah, sorry about the propeller plane going by. We actually, the airport is in the middle of town here in Wellington, and we get the occasional propeller plane coming straight over from the South Island, which is almost directly opposite me on a line with the airport. So they sometimes use Brooklyn, the village that I live in, as a direct route. Okay. All right, so ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum-bum. Right, and then resolution. So once again, the resolutions are extremely delicate. Okay, and yeah, so you've got this. Yeah, so you're even adding a third voice on here. So just kind of wondering. I mean, it does work. Are you just going to divisi in 3, right? So you have to put a rest here, right? Or I would even say put a like divisi in 3 and then show 3 voices here, right? So there'll be like a quarter rest over this, like the first voice, and then there'll be a quarter rest over here a half rest. Should let the players know that they're going to 3 voices so that they can allocate the seating, right? And then ending with this really delicate. I almost feel like there's just so much force here, right? Even though there isn't really much going on in the way of brass, you're just really climbing for that, and then you're pulling back, right? And you have a little bit of overlap of the string section going past the winds, which is very, very cool. I like that a lot. And then it's just it's just strings once again. Like, what if it had been some winds right in there, just really soft, like even triple P, just right behind the strings, so that just give it a little bit more body. Now here, I know that the Sibelius, the way that Sibelius and Note Performer are set up, notes for harp they sound the harmonic on the note that they are, that the note that is written. But that is not what harpists want. So in order to get this note sounding on this harmonic, you would have to notate it down here. Okay, so just a warning. I mean, someday I really hope that Note Performer gets it together, and maybe Note Performer 4 will have the notes, like harp notes will sound an octave higher than written, right? That is just really what harpists want. Like most harpists that I've talked to, like they might say, well, I'll understand it if you write it out for me. But, if you were to ask me what I prefer, same thing here. Like, what would the harpist prefer? They would prefer it to be written here, right? Because that's the note that is the string they're actually going to be plucking, right? Every note on the page is a string on the harp, right? So if you want this to sound an octave higher, it's really better to indicate the note written, or excuse me, the note sound, the note played, the string played. Okay, so this celesta scoring in here, I mean, there's a few notes are going to come through here and there, but I almost feel like it's just, yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, and as far as the harp is concerned, you could just like get away with going, you know, bum bum chord, bum 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 chord, right? And then the pizzicato will be strong enough on its own. Yeah, it's like it's just a question of giving the harp like the most effective thing to do that actually has a chance of getting through, right? Yeah, but I think that the da da like the going down to the F sharp, that's possibly something that would not be all that strong, and you're giving the harpist like the most of the responsibility in the highest place, right? Da 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 dum. This is really not going to come through as a full line, right? And you completely give everybody else the day off right there, right? Why can't the violinist go da 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 dum? Why can't the flute play that too? Giving it to the harp, it's the softest instrument in the orchestra besides the celesta. The celesta is even softer at sometimes. So neither of those instruments are really capable of carrying that through, putting through that. Like the only instrument that you've got that isn't from this really soft group of instruments is the viola, which is the softest instrument of the violin group, right? So you really are like the responsibility there has just really rested on the shoulders. And then to make matters more confusing, you are scoring a piano for this G right in here, this G sharp, right? Sounding C sharp. So this is where you're getting into territory where it's very hard for the horn player to control the dynamic, right? So above F, above written F, the horn player like they could play what they feel to be piano, but it's not going to sound piano. It is going to sound pretty big and strong, right? It's going to sound more like mezzo forte, right? So you've got these. The end result here is that you've got this very soft, beautiful orchestration, by the way, but then you don't finish the line, and it gets just killed by this high note on the horn, and nobody can hear da dum, the obvious thing here, right? You can hear a little bit going on in viola, right? So it's just really easy to fix. Just add that note to these parts, and then figure out something different for the horn player to do it. Maybe down an octave, right? You could put that right down there, right? Or something else. All right, da 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 bum. Yeah, and the same thing again. Like we don't have the F sharp in a strong place, except for here in the first violins, right? You're letting the flute off, right? Why can't the flute play that F sharp, right? Bum 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 bum. Yeah, and then it's just a little. The delivery of the melody here is just a little inconsistent, right? We don't really hear those notes in between. Da da bum ba da bum ba ba bum bum ba bum bum. We have it here, but like it's kind of missing from these higher lines, right? So I just think that's another place. It's not it's not enough for the harp to put them in here. It's not going to sound as maybe the Celesta could have supplied them, scored higher, but so there's a missing piece right there, right? But I mean, all the same, it's really beautiful. I think this is another place where there's a wrong note on the harmony somewhere. Okay, but all the same, I thought it was really great. So now going on to this part, bum 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 bum, and what's really nice is that this ending part from rehearsal C onwards. Is really bringing out the imagination of the people who are participating in this challenge, and it's just lovely to see. All right, so here you're kind of doing a similar strategy to me, actually. Horns, like I actually only used horns in my score, but you're having trombones, trumpet, and so on, like all sort of joined together, da 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 da, and it's kind of nice because it's it has a nice arc to it. But I think you need to be more consistent with your slurring, right? So here you're deciding to go da da. Do it here too, right? Don't just copy the piano phrasing, right? So same thing here, ba 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 ba, right? Okay. I think you can also keep your melody, like if you're, if the melody is going to your brass, you can keep them soft. They will still be heard perfectly fine. And especially, like, you also need to kind of diminuendo right here at the end too, right, of your phrases, so that this beautiful floating stuff in here doesn't just get blown away by the remaining brass sounds, right? So softly. So piano, it's fine. Okay, maybe having hairpins in here, hairpin forward, hairpin out, right? So crescendo, diminuendo to pianissimo. And then this floats down from the heavens, right? Then the same thing here, mezzo piano, not mezzo forte, crescendo, right? And then this could be piano, right? Doesn't have to be pianissimo always, right? And then you could just slowly build if you continue on with your orchestration, right? Each time, it looks like you're heading for slightly louder every time, and that's fine, terrace dynamics, but just make everything match, okay, all the way through without just, tweaking the dynamics so much, all right? This is fine, though, just little touches. Okay, so the one last thing I just don't understand here is every other player tremolo. So do you mean that every other player is playing a measured tremolo so every player is playing a measured tremolo except for every other player playing an unmeasured tremolo? Because it already is tremolo, right? So if it's a question of if you have actual 4 parts here with measured and unmeasured tremolo, then you need another staff. Okay? So that just really wasn't clear. Or if every other player was not playing tremolo, then same thing, right? You'd have 2 separate staves. One would have players without any measured tremolo, just like with simple stems, and then the other, and so on. So, like, if your main thrust here is playing measured tremolo and so on, then you don't want slurs, right? So, because slurs, when a string player is slurring, they are connecting everything with one bow. However, here you're going yucka ducka 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 ducka, right? So it's going up down up down up down up down up down with their bowing, right? So there's obviously no need for a slur mark right in there. Okay. So yeah. So so I just did not understand like the every other player thing, right? So I would say don't use that. That isn't a thing. All right. Just have if you need more voices, some of them tremolo, some of them not, then do something different with your notation. Okay. So yeah. So just what a great score to dig into. I just really enjoyed this, Eskil. I mean, yet you do not have to be a perfect orchestrator to get the best out of me as a coach. All right. There's so many cool things like that I didn't get a chance to talk about that I really, really liked, like this harmonic here in the first flute. I thought that was just awesome. So I mean, there's so many really neat things about this. Do not be discouraged about me picking this apart. That's my job. Okay, it's like if you completely were perfect as an orchestrator, you wouldn't, there wouldn't be much point in doing this challenge other than just to hear my opinion about it, right? So like anything that I can tell you about your score that is useful to you as a developing orchestrator, and obviously you are developing, and getting better and better. Anything that I can do and say that will make you a better orchestrator, go ahead and use it. And if something, some bit of advice doesn't make sense to you or isn't helpful, then just ignore it, okay? I am not the last word on anything, okay? But I really enjoyed looking at your score, and I am so appreciative of your support of the channel through Patreon, and like any comments that you might have, like any insights that you might have on other the scores of other participants, like the last couple of people who I uploaded evaluations today, then please do let them know if you like their scores, or if there's any there might even be something about their scores that you want to ask them a question. So I just really love the whole process of engagement, right? So I'm actually hoping that I will see you for 2021 for the next score evaluations for the next orchestration challenge, because it would be really great to see where you go from here as an orchestrator. It just always fascinates me. So thanks again for your support, and thank you for entering the challenge. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed your score. It was just fantastic. So I think I will just stop there for today, and then tomorrow we will see some evaluations coming for our website participants.